Hello guys, and welcome to Hangout number 96. I wanted to do this live, but I've been overtaken by events. As you probably know, there's a war in Ukraine, there's a massive invasion of Europe from Africa, there's a crisis on the American southern border, there's possibility of war in Taiwan, China invading Taiwan. There's massive inflation and all anybody's talking about is Russell Brand accused of rape. Oh dear. I've never been a great fan of Brand. I published an article about him last year, about March of last year. I put a link to that, and when these allegations came to light, I published an article with the Duran. I won't be writing for Duran anymore. Very sad, but I thought it was appreciated. Apparently I'm not. I've tried to delete my account, but there's no delete button. I expected more of these guys, but there you go. Anyway, my last article sums up my view. There's been some very good commentary, especially by Kim Iverson. Esther Krakow chimed in on it, about the due process, etc. If you haven't seen it, there's a Channel 4 Dispatches documentary. It's on the Channel 4 website. If you can't access that for any reason, I've no doubt that bits of it, or maybe the whole thing, will appear on the regular internet, YouTube or whatever, in due course. You can hear a beeping. As I've said before, that's my smoke alarm and the heat. That's the smoke alarm. No, I'm not sure which one it is, but it's annoying. I couldn't do anything about it, even though it isn't very hot today. It's raining earlier. I've never been a great fan of Brand. You know, this attitude is like with Andrew Tate. It impresses young men. Brand has never set himself up as a like Tate. He's just been a flamboyant. Well, as a comedian, he sucked. He really sucked. He reinvented himself as a political commentator, whatever. There's been some suggestion that this is an act because he knew what was coming, and he wanted to align himself with the right sort of people outside the media. I think it's more of a like David Icke. He's had a revealed truth. They're not quite as absurd as David Icke's. He hasn't gone into his supernatural stuff. He's just realised that human nature and the way governments, especially in the West, lie and manipulate, and the whole thing, the whole media thing. I mean, just how absurd it is. There's a new book out which claims, but by some Nigerian author, claims that the original Britain's black, that blacks have been in Britain longer than white. That's ludicrous stuff. They're rewriting history. I mean, not legitimate revisionism, just making stuff up as they go along. We've seen this with the gender lobby as well. Trying to deny the reality of biological sex. And the governments are doing nothing about this. They're doing nothing about this migrant crisis. It's almost as though they want it to happen. And America's going down the toilet. Brand has realised all this. He's looked into Big Pharma and the lies that we were told there, of COVID and censorship. They're trying to make out it wasn't censorship. Yeah, the Democrats. First of all, there's no censorship. Then these are private companies. Then the Republicans did it too, because Trump contacted Twitter and asked them to take down a defamatory or angry message. It can't be compared with like literally dozens of government agencies with direct channels to Facebook and YouTube and other social media companies. Twitter suggesting they take down material and all this other stuff that's going on. It's absurd. Brand woke up to this, and he's been doing some very good work. Will he survive this? I don't know. Tim Pool made a big thing about his YouTube account being demonetised. Wow. And some airhead British minister has written to Rumble asking them about well, it's ludicrous, absolutely insane. Mark Williams Thomas has been called in to comment on this, and if you don't know, Mark Williams Thomas is the man who's credited with exposing Jimmy Savile. In fact, he framed the dead man. I'll put a link to that below to my video of Savile. A few comments here about Brand and his career as a so-called comedian. In 2008, he and his chum Jonathan Ross played what was called a prank, particularly sick one. They phoned the actor Andrew Sachs, who died in 2016. He was the grandfather of Georgina Bailey, who was an actress and I think she's a singer-songwriter. And basically, she was a conquest of Brand, and they were leaving messages on this guy's answer phone. And Ross, he said outright, he fucked your granddaughter, which, I mean, that's gross. Ross is a bigger cunt than Brand ever was, I think. Well, it can't be much less of one. In 2006, Heather Mills was she was married fairly briefly to Paul McCartney. She was a model, and she lost her leg in an accident. She was hit by a car, and she lost her leg, which is a terrible thing for anyone, but for an attractive young woman, sort of high-flying young woman. She married McCartney, and Ross made a sick joke about her at some. You probably find on YouTube, saying that she was a lie about her. It's a horrible joke. It wasn't really a joke. I actually wrote a letter to Disability Now. It was published. I'll put a link to that as well. About this Ross. I mean, they're just some of the horrible people. Some of these these Channel 4 types, and I think Ross was I think it was either ITV or BBC. It was Channel 4. I can't be bothered to look him up. Actually, he's beneath my contempt. But Brand was into that sort of garbage, and the way he treated women. Yeah, I want to play you something. This is very interesting.
What's happened to the journalists of the world? What's happened to the journalists in this country that you do not... I mean, we know from Kevin Spacey, from Cliff Richard, from Paul Gambaccini, all these people were trialled by media, and it's stuck. Whatever's said and done, the sulliness sticks on them, and they've all been told that they're, gone into court and told they're innocent. I've got to tell you something. I came across Russell Brand in the 90s. I think we were in China White or something. I was with my girlfriends. And he was horrid. He was... absolutely
so many
horrid,
women say that.
Lechy, whatever. But do you know what, Andrew? What really shocked me is the amount of women chucking themselves at him, literally throwing themselves at him. So whatever said and done, he has repented. He has written books about it, and he has repented. And he is now living a very clean, decent life.
If you haven't seen it, check out my hangout on the 3 H's of sexual predation, which are hypermasculinity, hypergamy, and hybristophilia. I don't think anyone would call Brand hypermasculine. Hybristophilia is, it's more sort of overt criminality, but it's, and hypergamy. This is the idea that by treating women like dirt, men signify that they are inferior and they should look up to them. It works for so many men. Never worked for me because I've never tried it. I think it was Cary Grant who said, treat a whore like a princess and a princess like a whore. I always believe you should treat a whore like a whore, and a princess like a princess, and you should assume a woman is a princess unless and until she shows something different. But yeah, they just, I mean, it's really annoying that I mean, I would say young men looked up to Brand as much as women, but it is astounding that women are attracted to men like that instead of men like you are. No, seriously. And there's this claim that he slept with 800 women a month or something ludicrous. Was it a month or a year? I don't. Well, it's some ludicrous number. It can't be a month. 800 women. Well, a ludicrous number. 4 or 5 a day. Of course, these aren't sleeping. These are like bunk up in the dressing room or even in the toilet, which is, it's become me old-fashioned. I always liked a bit of romance with my sex, but this is just, and it's really. I'd be surprised if he didn't catch something or something really bad. But I say now he's like a regular guy, married, he's got 2 daughters, and I bet that like 15 years or so from now, when his daughter, I think his daughter's old, his daughter's about 7, so 8 or 9 years from now, when his eldest daughter and his youngest daughter, when they're teenagers, I think he will be a very, very protective father. I don't think he will allow any man to get anywhere close to them if he suspects they have bad intentions. Something else I should point out is that recently, after the start of this nonsense, Georgina Bailey gave an interview in which she said that, like Brand, she had issues with substance addiction, and that he paid for her rehab, put her in rehab, so she's got no hard feelings towards him. So I think that shows him in I would say a different light, but I think it shows him to be sincere in his new incarnation, if you want to call it that. One really serious allegation. All the others, a 16-year-old girl, well, she was 16. When she was 16, she was dating him and he was 31. This has been called creepy. Many years ago, more years ago than I care to remember, when I was living in a bedsit in a faraway city, another tenant told me that his 17-year-old sister had taken up with a 34-year-old ex-con, tattoos and everything. Maybe not such an ex-con. What can you do in situations like that? Just, if you're a parent, you don't want to say stay away from this guy, because teenagers will do exactly the opposite. Teenage girls especially. I don't think there's anything particularly creepy about a 16-year-old going out with a 31-year-old. A couple of years older. Richie Blackmore was 44 when he met the 18-year-old Candice Knight, and look what they did to the world of music. Amazing. So I don't take any Mark Williams Thomas, no. This has been called, the documentary was called Russell Brand Hiding in Plain Sight. They said the same thing about Savile. I said the same thing about Rolf Harris. Well, nobody saw anything because there was nothing to see. Harris he took his daughter's friend as a mistress. Years later, well, that was absurd, that. And then they trawled the world looking for women to accuse him. That was all bull. Jimmy Savile, this is a man whose public record is of doing nothing but good, and there was not one. Well, there was one coordinated false allegation against him from these women who had been at Duncroft School in the 1960s. That was made in 2007, and he debunked those allegations in 2009. But there's, I mean, complete rubbish. As I've said before many times, with historical allegations, and all these are historical, it's, you know, if you have if somebody accuses you of rape tomorrow, right? If you're a dude, we'll say, you're accused of rape, and the police come to you the following day, and you're nowhere in the vicinity, you can prove that nowadays with the cameras everywhere. It's fairly easy to prove you weren't at a certain place and weren't doing something. Not 100%, but you know, if it's like, if you're like 3 miles away, there'll be cameras galore. But if an allegation is backdated 10 years or even 10 months, there can be, you know, it's she said, he said, and why would a woman lie? Now, there is actually one contemporaneous allegation here. This is a woman who's been called Nadia. Was given the name Nadia. Some people think they know who she was, who she is. That is, she went to a rape crisis centre and she had a rape kit administered, and she spent 5 months in therapy. There are contemporaneous records, if these records really are contemporaneous, if they're not fabricated or written years later, especially like very recently, then that is evidence. But the evidence, what we had, suggests that, and from the texts that are being revealed, again, if this isn't manipulated, well, it appears to be manipulated, but if what we've seen is true, it appears that he wanted to have sex without protection, and she wanted to use a condom. These are disgusting things, absolutely disgusting. And it appears she went to this rape crisis centre to get a free test for venereal disease, or sexual STDs they're called now. In America, he paid for everything, basically. And there was actually a recent case of a woman named Renee Scogland, I'd say recent this year, a recent addition to the timeline. She had a liaison, it was a married woman, she had a liaison with some dude, and then she invented this story to get a free test at a clinic. There was another one, it's Singapore, Malaysia or Hong Kong. I added it to the timeline fairly recently. I've been looking for it, but I can't find it. But there's some Oriental woman, she accused him, I think it may be China, she accused the dude of rape so she could get a free STD test. If you was ancient as me, you remember the AIDS pandemic, and there was massive advertising campaigns then trying to convince us that we're all equally at risk instead of homosexuals and intravenous drug users. But before that, I remember I very rarely use public toilets, but except in the not dedicated public toilets. You know, if I'm in the library or somewhere, I'll use one. But it used to be, if you visit a public toilet, there would be maybe a notice on the wall saying, if you have a disease, contact this. If you go to hospital, especially accident or emergency, you may see notices on the wall, and I notice saying, one advising women not to drink heavily, or to go home with somebody, to go home in a taxi, not what to do they don't know, and this is called victim blaming. And there may be one advertising like a clinic for sexually transmitted diseases. They're free in Britain at point of use, thankfully. you know, people can get, I mean, there's all sorts of diseases. Well, there's something called NSU, non-specific urethritis, which you can catch it without, it's basically a generic name for urinary tract infection, but well, because it's like, you know, filth, urine and the other place, you get infections there which are not connected to sexual. You don't have to have sex to catch a disease which can be sexually transmitted. The interpretation that Kim Iverson and others have put on this is that she went there to get this test, and that she in the documentary she said she's realised he raped me. Well, I wonder how many sessions she'd had at the rape crisis centre before she realised that. Having said it, I'm not condoning anything Friend has done before his reinvention, as it were. I mean, this sordid lifestyle. I mentioned Esther Krakow and Kim Iverson. Other females have spoken out as well, not necessarily in defence of sort of Brand himself, but in defence of due process. And Harvey Proctor, I haven't looked at his video yet, but Harvey Proctor, as you may know, is a homosexual, and he was accused of absolutely insane stuff. Absolutely insane. The big problem Brand will have is that others will come forward. They love that expression. That creep Mark Williams Thomas said that other women already come forward, and one or maybe two women already approached him. And there's all this guff about how difficult it is for women to report rape and how difficult it is for them to get justice. Well, no, I'm sorry. There can at times be difficulties with prosecuting rape cases when issues consent. But with historical cases, one more time, boys and girls, one more time, with historical cases, no evidence is required, only a story and maybe a few tears. Right, now let me comment on some of the ludicrous stuff that the Sisterhood has been saying about this case. There's an article here published by The Independent. Why are Russell Brand's accusers only talking about it now? I'll tell you why. It's by Jessica Taylor. She styles herself Dr. Jessica Taylor. Same way Charlotte Proudman styles herself Dr. Charlotte Proudman. So everybody knows how clever she is. Taylor, she's a horrible woman. She looks quite attractive with those problem glasses, but she's got tattoos on both arms, and she's a man-hating dyke. Why are they talking about this now? Why didn't they report it to the police? Did they bring it upon themselves? Are they doing it for the money? Don't be fooled. This isn't about just an army of men taking to Twitter /X with their unbridled misogyny. Women were happily among them. For a perfect recent example, look at what happened online to Amber Heard. Yes, look what happened to Amber Heard. Amber Heard was perpetrated, not a victim. And as a psychologist who specialises in the blaming of women, I know there are no countries, communities, societies or religions in the world that consistently stand by victims of sexual abuse and violence. Yeah, it's probably why rape is capital in Saudi Arabia and Iran. I'm sorry, whenever they use the phrase sexual violence, it puts me right off. When we ask why so many women never report being raped to the police, we need to look at the confidence women have lost in our police forces. Can anyone blame women for not turning to a force that harboured offenders like Wayne Couzens and David Carrick? Wayne Couzens is, for future reference, if you're listening to this down the line, was a police officer who kidnapped, raped and murdered a young woman named Sarah Everard. Absolute monstrous. David Carrick is a former police officer who got away with rape for years and is now serving a life sentence. Or one which has led to rape prosecutions falling to an all-time low. See, they want more convictions, basically. Women and girls are socialised to blame themselves for what men do to them from an early age. Since when? Women and girls are also bombarded with victim-blaming rape myths and victim-prejudice messages their whole lives. She was drunk, she was wearing a short skirt, she was flirting with him. Again, this bit about drunk, it isn't victim-blaming to ask women to not put themselves in danger. There isn't victim-blaming at all. And there's all this garbage here. One study in 2016 found that teenage girls who withdrew from rape cases actually had better psychological outcomes than the girls who went through with them. Yeah, it may be that having a good conscience makes her feel like that. You know, withdrawing a false rape claim. Just complete garbage. I wrote an article again. What I'll do is I'll put a link up. It's with the Duran. It's about her and Jessica Valenti. I call it Jessica and Jessica, Dumb and Dumber. Well, Jessica Valenti is a well, she's a really horrible woman. We've got here glamourmagazine.co.uk. Innocent until proven guilty. False rape allegations are rare. So why are people desperate to believe otherwise? By Chloe Laws. You can't believe how rare they are. You cannot believe how rare. Trigger warning. Rape and sexual assault. What happened to innocent until proved guilty? Reads a comment on my Instagram post about believing survivors in the wake of the Russell Brand allegations. We should always remain neutral until evidence supports the story, says another account. Accusations, believe men. Accusations, exclaim, believe men, echoes someone else. This is, you know, this is amazing. What is wrong with due process? If you're banning due process, you know, if you assume that every accuser, be it in a rape case or anything else, is telling the truth, then everybody's going to be convicted. You'll have like a Salem witch trial. And don't forget, it was it's women who end up being burned or hanged as, or drowned as witches as much as men, if not more than men. Probably because they deserve it more than men. Right, with regard to the supposed falsity of false rape allegations, I'll just give you two examples from the false rape timeline. Right, December 18th, 1943. Half of rape cases reported a bunk, police probe shows. This is from a newspaper, the Afro-American. It's an American newspaper. It's an American newspaper. December 18th, 1943, page 12. A senior police officer. You know, half of all rape allegations are bunk. In 1943, rape meant rape, right? It didn't mean, oh, I didn't really want it. It didn't mean like regret the morning after. Another one. This is from 1981. This is on the timeline at just 1981. False rape statistics of South Wales. In 1981, there were 34 rapes in South Wales, and every single one resulted in a conviction. There were also 45 admitted false allegations of rape. And as I've said in a recent Hangout, a lot of rape allegations, you read about them in the paper, and then nothing else. I'll give you a couple of examples I've dug out recently, which I can't find any follow-up yet. So I'm because there's no follow-up, I'm assuming there was no conviction or no arrest. Well, there's one here, December 20th, 1990. Evening Mail. I think it's a Sandwell Evening Mail, or Birmingham Evening Mail, page 7. Hunt for 4 men after rape. Police are hunting 4 men who drove a 24-year-old woman from Birmingham to Redditch and raped her. The woman walked into Southampton's Birmingham Road police station at 3 a.m. today and told officers she had been abducted. No follow-up. There's a very similar one to that, actually, which was a false allegation. That was a woman called... she's on the timeline. Here's another one. This is Evening Mail, September 25th, 1997, page 21. Woman raped in street attack. A woman was pinned down by a gang of attackers and raped on the pavement of a residential street in Birmingham. The 36-year-old woman screamed in terror in Horton Road, Handsworth, but no one heard her cries. I wonder why that was. She staggered home half naked following the brutal attack at 9:40 p.m. on Tuesday and raised the alarm. I can't find any follow-up. Well, that may be genuine, but there's lots that are not. And the recent one was, I only discovered this because I was watching Lady Colin Campbell's, she has a YouTube channel, and she mentioned then about she was discussing, I can't remember if it was Prince Andrew or something, but she said that her son had she didn't give a date. She couldn't remember the date, but it was actually 2018. Her son had held a festival there, Sunburn Festival or something, music festival, and she got up early one morning. The dogs were barking, and there was she went outside the house. And the place was calling the police. She lives at Goring Castle, outside the house, outside the castle. And there'd been a report of a rape, and she said that it turned out this was a girl who she met some guy and they'd had it off, and she didn't want her boyfriend to find out. She was an excuse, whatever, in case her boyfriend suspected something. Smelt another man on her, and I could find no reference to I've got a lot of stuff from England, especially in the database. So I went back through the press, and the attack was reported. It was in the Mail Online, in the local press as well. And there's a description of I think it was a mugshot, not a mugshot, a photo fit of an artist's impression of the rapist, down to his 2 earrings. I could find no follow-up either on the regular internet or in Newsbank. And as far as anybody knew, this was reading this, a girl had been raped at Castle Goring. And there were a lot of these cases, and women, they get themselves into situations and they withdraw their consent afterwards. I'm just not impressed by all this garbage. And the woman who claimed, well, a woman who appears to have claimed she was raped by Brand, who may have been brainwashed by the rape crisis center and to believe she was raped. She was obviously promiscuous, and it's this sort of behaviour. It's a lot more dangerous for women than for men. I've seen extreme cases. Prostitutes are murdered at a far higher rate than decent women. But the idea that women should not take any responsibility for themselves. As I said before, these sexual grievance industry and people like Jessica Taylor and this glamour magazine, they would rather a woman went out, got smashed out of her mind, got to a car with a man she didn't know, got raped, or even raped and murdered. They'd rather that than see her go home in a taxi, safe, as long as the guy was convicted. That's their attitude, They don't really give a fuck about women. They want more convictions, and I don't care how they get them. Returning to glamour, there are other articles about Brand. Can a 16-year-old really consent to sleeping with someone in their 30s? By Lucy Morgan, and the answer is yes. This girl claims she was groomed, groomed. So it doesn't wash. And there's all this garbage here about what is the legal definition of consent, and it's always about women. From rape crisis, a person doesn't have the freedom and capacity to consent if they are asleep or unconscious, as Diana Davidson says. There goes my favourite way of waking up. They are drunk or on drugs. Does that include Panadol or paracetamol? I took a couple of those earlier this evening. They'll be spiked, which is the same thing, except unknowingly. They are too young, under 16. They have a mental health disorder or illness that means they're unable to make a choice. They're being pressured, bullied, manipulated, tricked or scared into saying yes or no. Well, what does that mean? Just absolutely ludicrous. Should the age of consent be raised? Did you know that the age of consent in the UK used to be just 12 years old? Yes, I did actually. Set by the Statute of Westminster at 12, raised to 13 in 1875 it was 13, and in 1885 a moral panic started by the campaigning journalist W.T. Stead saw it raised to 16. Oh, there we go, it's got it here. I've probably been reading one of my websites. The problem with this, what they're trying to say here is that Keir Starmer has just said he wants to lower the voting age to 16. No. And Peter Tatchell, well, if you read some of the stuff he absolutely, well, I mean, Kelly Jackie Minshall's got his number big time. Innocent self-proven guilty. False flight allegations are so rare. They can't believe how rare they are. Now, as I said, the big problem Brand has is that there may be other accusers tempted to come forward, and it depends. If he gets the same treatment as John Leslie, the late Rolf Harris, John Leslie especially, I think, because Leslie was a bit of a ladies' man, but he wasn't like a creep like Brand used to be. I say used to be. I think he's a decent human being now. I mean, they say leopards don't change their spots. Well, human beings, not leopards. And hopefully, as we get older, we learn. I'm not saying, man, I was 30 years ago. I doubt if you were either. I mean, we hopefully we get more conservative as we grow older, a bit more understanding and a bit more reserved. And it works both ways. Decent people of both sexes can become monsters, and unsavoury individuals can become not necessarily saints, but decent people. I mean, they're crossing the switchblade. You read that? The problem Brand is going to have is if other accusers, especially if they're groping and stuff like that. I don't think there's any serious risk of any prosecution in the United States, but it might be here. I should mention there's another high-profile case in the news. This is the actor Danny Masterson, who's been given a 30-year sentence. So it was two 50-year sentences back to back for drugging and raping women years ago. This is complicated because Masterson is a Scientologist. Scientologists have a very bad reputation. Having said that, one thing I will say for them, they got psychiatry's number. They did a project with the great Thomas Sars exposing psychiatry. and I don't know, they drink, do they, Scientologists? They don't. They shoe drugs. Masterson's wife announced she was going to stand by him, and 2 weeks later filed for divorce. I don't know. I mean, he didn't take the stand at his trial, and my view is that certainly in a rape trial, the defendant should always take the stand, especially if you've got an aggressive lawyer who's asking probing questions of an accuser and calling her a liar, as she may well be. And then if the woman has to submit herself to a grueling cross-examination, and the defendant doesn't, what's he saying? What's he afraid of? So he should have taken a stand. But from what I've seen of it, I really don't know. But he's convicted now, so if he appeals conviction, probably won't get anywhere. But it's all very sordid. But Brand is, I don't know. This is a really a lesson to men to show. Well, if you act like that, the way Esther Krakow summed it up, she said that if he has like 800 lovers, whatever, there's going to be a few of them are disgruntled. Actually, one commentator, a woman, said that women would throw themselves at him, and then they'd be annoyed that he wouldn't phone them back. Well, why should he? He's got what he wanted, and some of them got what they wanted. In the States, there's something called clique chasing, where these women go after sportsmen, college sportsmen, it's all very sordid. I'm kind of glad I missed out on the swinging 60s. Well, they say the 1960s. If you can remember being there, you weren't. If you can remember them, you weren't really there. I was there, but I was too young to participate in the Summer of Love. But I'm glad in a way that I missed out on this. I think guys get into too much trouble having too much. They get into more trouble having too much sex and having too little, and women as well. Of course, it's a lot more dangerous for women. It always has to, even in the age of birth control. So anyway, that's my take on Brand. Do I think he's a rapist? No. I think he was a cunt. He used to be, but he's sobered up now. He's married, and hopefully he'll put all this behind him. Whether or not there's any criminal charges against him, there will certainly be pressure, but his reputation as he's got defenders, but his reputation, they've done a lot of damage, which is a bad thing, because he's doing good work with his social media channels. But I think I'll leave it there. Maybe I'll do a live hangout next. Just to mention that although I won't be writing for Duran anymore, I do have a Substack which I haven't really developed. I might publish some more on that. I want to make some more. I want to make a lot more videos actually, but I've got a hell of a lot on my plate besides the Force Rape timeline. My main website, which hasn't been updated for yonks. Again, you know where I am. If anyone wants to send me any cases, etc., you know how to contact me.